As a rogue, it's easy for me to spot the perfect mark. I get anything I want with a little distraction and patience. But as a role player, screw patience. I can't wait for my Dungeon Crate to arrive every month. Dungeon Crate brings me amazing RPG accessories like dice, minis, adventures, and lots more. And rumor has it around the guild, you also get a digital crate with even more secret extras. Dungeon Crate has what I want. Take what you deserve and become a member of Dungeon Crate today at dungeoncrate.com.
Good evening, Perry.
I own a motel not too far from here, and you'd be welcome to spend the night in one of the empty rooms if you'd like.
It burns! Oh, it burns! And I'm the devil.
Once again, under a blanket of stars, another late-night conversation here on the Necronomicast, this time with Jason Offutt. Jason, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
I'm really excited to have you on the show. Now, we're going to go back in time a little bit. I met you at the Omaha Haunticon back in the spring, and I was the MC of the event, and so I was given a list of people to introduce for the keynote speakers, and then help facilitate time with questions and answers. And I'm like, okay, so we have an author, Jason Offutt. He's a professor. I wonder if this is going to be like an egghead discussion, if this is going to be interesting or not. And I have to tell you, you were my favorite keynote speaker. And there was a lot of good keynote speakers at that event. You were my favorite speaker at Haunticon with your stories and your promotion of your book, Chasing American Monsters. So I'm really excited to have you on the Necronomicast today.
Well, that's terrific, and I really appreciate that. That's high praise, because they had some good speakers at Haunticon.
They sure did. Jamie did a great job putting that together. So let's kind of get some stuff out of the way. You are a journalism professor, is that right?
Yes.
So I'm not necessarily talking to some crazy crackpot conspiracy
theorist. Oh, you can't make that assumption.
That's right. Cool, man. So I was reading about you and what you kind of related during your talk at the Haunticon. You've always had an interest in the paranormal, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. Can you give us a little bit of your background about your interest in the paranormal and how you kind of became interested in writing about it?
Right. Well, I had a number of things happen to me when I was a kid, and I was already interested in ghosts and vampires, werewolves, all sorts of monsters, aliens, because I was a huge science fiction nut and horror movie nut from the beginning. But we had I got really super into monsters when the local Metro Daily, the Kansas City Times, started writing stories about a Bigfoot encounter. A number of Bigfoot encounters in my state of Missouri, and I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Even as a little kid, I'm like, okay, it's in the newspaper, because I was a newspaper nerd too, and I'm like, this is there's something to this if the newspaper's covering it. So that got me really interested in monsters. I followed that quite a bit and did all the reading on Bigfoot I could find, but I lived in a it had been an old schoolhouse way back in the day, and it was turned into a 3-bedroom home. But I lived in this house that was about 120 years old at the time. And when I was about 8 or 9, I walked out of my room into this hallway where Dad had built a bunch of bookshelves, and I was going to grab I don't know, probably the D World Book Encyclopedia to look up dinosaurs. And standing in the hallway was a little boy. And we lived 6 miles out in the country. There's no little, I was the only little boy within 6 miles of my house. And I mean, I could still see him in my head, the brown hair parted on the left side, the blue flannel shirt and blue jeans. And the weirdest thing about him, other than being there, was the fact that I could see a bookshelf through him. And we just stood there and stared at each other for a while until he blinked, and that broke the shock I was in. And I turned around and went in my bedroom and shut the door and didn't talk to anybody about it for decades. But the journalists covering Bigfoot and me seeing, a full-bodied apparition. I don't know if he was full-bodied because I never looked down at his feet. But anyway, me seeing that in my house, that made me realize, there are things out there that science hasn't, really put their stamp on yet, but it's real. And those two incidents really got my interest in the paranormal started.
Did you ever go back and look at the history of your home, or the area of the land, like if there was something built there beforehand, to see like who perhaps this boy was?
You'd think I would have done that, and I even I was interviewing a psychic, and I've always been skeptical of psychics.
Sure.
But this woman told me things that there's no way in hell she could have known, and very specific things. And then she said, "You saw a ghost in your house when you were a kid." And I'm like, "Whoa, yeah, I did." And she said, "I can see him right now too." And she described who I saw. And she goes, "What would you like me to tell you about him?" And I said, "Nothing." Because that's why I didn't research him, because that would be way too personal for me. And I had that encounter. I don't want to know anymore.
Yeah, you have to sometimes like establish some boundaries. Right,
and that's and having one in my house as I grew up, that's something I want to keep separate from me.
Sure. Our faithful listeners will remember back a couple, like a year or two ago, when my friend, jazz musician Andrew Voss was talking about, he saw a full-bodied apparition in a house that he was renting in Lincoln, Nebraska when he was going to school. And he saw it and had that experience, and he kind of moved on from it. And then later when he was talking to the lady who lived out of state, who actually owned the home that he mailed the rent checks to, she said, "Oh, by the way, have you seen the woman?" And that's the only time he got scared, because it established, well, there was a history of an apparition in the house, and he wasn't the only one, and he wasn't crazy. That's the point where he was like, oh no more of that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm right there with him. Yeah, exactly.
So having the psychic confirm, like, well, you saw a ghost. Yeah, that would kind of put the kibosh on going forward with an investigation on that.
Right. I've always felt, about the paranormal, I think it's fun. I love reading about the paranormal. I love talking to people. So the paranormal is great as long as it's happening to somebody else.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. And when you were talking about your, growing up, and let me ask, how old are you?
54.
Okay. Well, I'm 45, so we're not too far off, but we grew up about the same time when you had to go to the school library or the public library, or maybe catch something like In Search Of on TV to kind of...
Oh, I was hooked on that show, but anyway.
Right, no, totally. But we had to go those routes to kind of get our fix, as it is, on the paranormal. I remember going and finding, these tattered old books on Bigfoot and Patterson-Gimlin and the Loch Ness Monster and things like that, and Hans Holzer books, and to kind of, because it wasn't mainstream like it is now.
Right. Yeah. Like in elementary school, when and they actually still have the Scholastic Book Club order forms. Man, that was a big deal, getting the Scholastic Book Club order forms. And I've had my buddies would be getting biographies of baseball players. And I'd be getting books on Sasquatch.
Yeah. My kids, I have two boys that are in elementary school, and we still get the thin papered Scholastic book form, that you have to fill out and clip and then send a check to school. I mean, they still do that. I thought everything would be online now, but no, we still get the Scholastic book order. And yeah, there's a whole section of like baseball greats and race cars, and there's Star Wars and all this stuff. And then there's like a little section, like, like maybe there's a book about something about the paranormal or something like that. So yeah, funny. So now you are an established writer, and I've got a couple of your books here. I really enjoyed, we'll start with the nonfiction. I'm looking, you have a bunch of them here. Haunted Missouri. You have books about the paranormal in your backyard. Paranormal Missouri, and then shadow people. So let's start with the shadow people. I've had some guests on the show. A gentleman that goes by the name Dark Waters, who's been on Coast to Coast, and
I've heard him before. Yeah,
I had some late night conversations with him, and he was really interesting to listen to about things about shadow people and demonology and dogman and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about your research into like shadow people, for example?
Well, and shadow people, this is one of the things that also, and I kind of left that out because it's always been, I've always approached writing about the paranormal or researching it as a journalist. And when I interview somebody who's seen a ghost or encountered, had a Sasquatch encounter or has run into black-eyed kids or something like that, I will base, the look in their eyes, the tenor of their voice. I think I've got a really good BS detector because I was a newspaper reporter for quite a while.
Yeah.
And since I have kids, I really hope I have a good BS detector.
God bless us all.
Okay, so if somebody tells me, yeah, I saw, this craft come, fly over me, I'm gonna take them at their word if I'm sure they're at least convinced they saw it. However, if somebody starts telling me that, yeah, I talked to ghosts in my house and I've been aboard a UFO and I've given JFK a back rub in the last 2 weeks. At that point, you're like, no, you're just, you're nuts. You're not telling me the truth here. So I've had a number of encounters, so I don't like to tell people all the stuff I've had happen to me, but they've all been really pretty little.
Okay.
So they haven't been really, really huge. Like my ghost, it was probably, 10 seconds.
Sure.
But, something else I saw in that house was shadow people. And I clearly remember the first night I had just gone to bed. I always left my bedroom door open. I went in, I shut the light off. I crawled under the covers. And living out in the country, one of the benefits is you don't have to close your shades because there's no peeping Toms. Nobody's going to look in your window.
Mm-hmm.
So, my shades were always open, and when the moon was out and it was a clear night, I could see everything in my room. The Farrah Fawcett poster I had on the wall. There's my age coming in.
Oh, I remember. Hey, dude, I remember the Farrah Fawcett poster.
Yeah. So, I could see everything in my room. It was like a nice uniform gray, and as I was leaning back, I noticed this corner of the room was dark, and then something moved in it, and I was frozen. And a man walked out of the corner of my room and walked by my bed and out into the hallway. And I immediately started screaming for my dad, who dropped a GD, turned the light on, and walked through the hallway to come into my room and see what happened. And of course, he turned on all the lights and nothing was there. But the figure was, I'm going to say it was tall, but one, I was laying back in a bed, and I was like 9. But it was, I couldn't make out any features. It looked like a man. It looked like one of those one of those magnets you put on your fridge.
Really?
Yeah, kind of 2-dimensional, and there were no real features to it. And I started seeing them more and more often. Sometimes it would be one, sometimes it would be, maybe 6 walking through my room. It looked like they were going from point A to point B, and my room was right in the middle. They never took interest in me whatsoever, but it scared the hell out of me. And then, they just stopped after a couple months. They stopped. But I always in my head called them shadow people because that's what they looked like, shadows. And it wasn't until I heard Art Bell talking about them in the early to mid 90s that I realized, holy crap, other people have seen these. And I started talking to people who had shadow people encounters, and it not just validated it for me, but it spurred me on to do research for my book of all the different types of shadow people have seen. I interviewed physicists about, shadow people can do this. I mean, can you explain this in scientific terms? I spoke with experts in Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam. Spoke with a Cherokee shaman, and all of these different faiths, these different religions have shadow people in their mythos. So this isn't just something limited, to Christianity, and all except for Hinduism. In all cases, these are all evil creatures. But I mean, in the research, it really opened my eyes, the fact that this is not just a worldwide phenomenon, but it stretches out, through the millennia as well.
And this is when you were growing up in Missouri, right?
Right. I mean, I didn't start researching it until the early 2000s, but I saw them in Missouri when I was a kid.
Yeah, I was a disciple of the great Art Bell, and so I listened to all those shows about shadow people and things like that. And it's I don't know where to hang my belief on that in terms of what the origins of the shadow people are, because like you said, like all these different religions have some kind of history talking about them, and it's gone through hundreds of years. They've been kind of seen, spotted, reported, talked about. It's been kind of part of culture for forever, it seems like. And all that's included in your book. It's called Darkness Walks, the Shadow People Among Us. And before, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to let our listeners know that they can go to your website, and that's jasonoffutt.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
And all these books are available to purchase. And we want to encourage people to do that too. So I'm sorry, you were going to continue.
Oh yeah, I was just going to continue on with kind of what you were saying is that all these different cultures and everything going way back. Shadow people are there. The person I interviewed, the oldest person I interviewed about a shadow person encounter, he was a kid back in 1947 and had shadow people walking through his room. But one of the things that I found extremely interesting is there were so many different behaviors of shadow people that I've come to the conclusion that shadow people are not the same thing, because the ones that I saw, and those are the most common, they don't take any interest in the people who see them, but they look like they're walking purposely someplace. I mean, those are one type. Explanations could be, maybe we're really close to a different dimension, and that's all we can see of the people is the shadows. Then there are plenty shadows with blazing red eyes, or the Hat Man, which is a shadow figure that wears a fedora, and those types are seen quite often as well. But they always, exude a feeling of ominousness and evil. So I mean, there are, and some of them behave just like residual ghosts.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if some might be just residual energy. It's interesting that you said fedora instead of like maybe, I don't know, a pork pie hat or perhaps a top hat, or what do you think?
Right.
What's up with the fedora?
I don't know. Who wears a fedora nowadays? Just Indiana Jones. That's it.
Somebody real cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was common dress back in the 30s, 40s, 50s.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Businessmen would wear suits and a fedora. So at one point that was common. Maybe they're just foul-tempered business ghosts who are walking around. I don't know, but generally the shadow people or the Hat Man, these are generally people are frightened by those. A lot. They feel I was frightened because there was some see a shadow dude walking through my room. Okay, that's frightening enough, but like the Hat Man and the red-eyed shadows, tend to people feel like an extra oomph of fear, kind of like the beings are trying to generate fear so they could feed off of it. That's an explanation that a lot of people who've encountered these have given me.
Almost like a demonic kind of thing,
yeah. And that's what the very first religious expert I talked with was a Catholic exorcist.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to describe the shadow people, and he finished it for me almost exactly how I was going to say it. And his explanation for shadow people is because generally when people encounter a shadow person, it's maybe a little bit too tall, or its arms are a little too long, or its legs are too short, or there's something just not 100% human about it. And this guy said that, and I asked him why that would be, and he said because they are fallen angels. These are the demons that try to tempt mankind and possess them, and since they're not made by God, they can't take the exact form of something that was made by God, being humans. And well, I mean that's the religious take, the Catholic take of it, but I mean he described what I was going to describe right to a T.
Very interesting. So all that's included in that book, Shadow People. Pretty crazy. I'm holding in my hand, I bought this book at Haunticon after your presentation. It's called Chasing American Monsters, 250 Creatures, Cryptids, and Hairy Beasts. And I tore through it right away 6 months ago. Every chapter is a different state of our union, and you talk about the local legends or the local monsters that are famous in that particular state. That was it's a nice sized book, small print, 360 some odd pages. How long did it take you to put that together?
Well, it took me a couple of years. But I wasn't just sitting and doing that particular book. I was working on a novel at the time too. So if I would have just been focusing on one book. By the way, anyone out there who any authors out there who haven't tried writing two books at the same time, I'm going to suggest not to do it.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was really draining, and I got it done. But oh, holy moly, it was tough. If I would have just focused on that, it might have been. Generally, I can wrap a book up in 3 to 6 months.
How did you go about, putting together and researching every state in the union? Was that your initial plan to go through all 50 states, or were you just going to kind of gather stories and then you're like, well, I might as well just do it this way?
Well, no, I had wanted to. I'd wanted to write it because I've written about ghosts, I've written about shadow people, and I wanted to pick a topic that I've always loved, which is monsters, cryptozoology, and write a book on it. And there are lots of regional books, Ghosts of the Southwest, or Monsters of Maine, or I'm just making these up. I don't even know if those books exist, but
right. There was a book when I was growing up, and it's still out now. It's the Ghosts of Lincoln, and everybody in Nebraska that was into this kind of thing purchased this book, The Ghosts of Lincoln, and just kind of talked about the different legends of Lincoln, Nebraska. And I think I looked on Amazon; it's like in its 16th printing or something like that. So I mean, it's been a favorite around here forever.
Right. And there are books, there are localized regional books like that all over the place.
Right.
And I wrote one. I wrote Haunted Missouri. That was my ghostly tour guide to the Show Me State. But it's limited to the region where it is. And I love reading about other places, and I figured there are lots of people who love reading about other places, but they want to read their own local ones too. So I thought, hey, I'll have something in this book for everybody. Whatever their home state is, it'll be covered.
What I was amazed with reading the book, there is a lot of like prehistoric animal sightings. Like I was reading about Alaska, and there's still woolly mammoth sightings. I was reading about dinosaurs being spotted around. Did that kind of surprise you when you're putting it together?
No, not at all. Because that's one of the things I've been interested in for a very long time. Okay, because all right, 65 million years ago, we had something fall from the sky, and all the dinosaurs died,
right?
And all the sea dinosaurs, except for the sharks, they died too. But I think this has been a long time ago. I was reading about the coelacanth.
Which one's that? What's that?
Okay, the coelacanth is a lobe-limbed fish. It's a pretty good size. They're like 5-6 feet long. That lived during the dinosaur period, 65 million years ago. There are fossils of these fish, but when the extinction happened, there weren't any fossils anymore. So they're dead, right? They died with the dinosaur. That's how science viewed them until 1938, 1939. I think it's 38. But anyway, there was a fisherman in South Africa, and he caught a fish that he didn't recognize, and he got a hold of the curator of a museum in South Africa, and she came down to the dock and took a look at this fish. And this was a fish that the locals knew about. They'd caught it and sold it for as long as they could remember. But this museum curator said, "Oh, that's a coelacanth." So this fish that was supposed to be extinct for 65 million years was caught live by a fishing vessel. And what they discovered is there is a population of them that live off the coast of South Africa. There's also a population that's been discovered around Indonesia. So if these creatures survived the extinction, why couldn't something else? Okay, why couldn't there are jungles that we haven't, explored fully in Africa and South America that have legends of dinosaurs, like the Mokele Mamembe from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. There's an old story of what the words mean is he who dams rivers.
Wow.
And when Westerners, went to this area, the locals were talking about this creature. And when one of these Westerners, a scientist, came back, he brought a book of dinosaurs and showed them a picture of an apatosaurus, and they're like, "That's it, right there." Similar stories. I can't remember the name of the professor, but a professor at the University of Missouri spends time in Africa and has talked with the locals about something they call the kogamatu, which is an enormous bat-winged bird that has leathery skin and will sometimes steal small livestock or their children. And he did similar to what the other Westerner did, is bring a book with a picture of a pterodactyl, and they said that is the kogamatu.
Amazing.
So, if one of the things that we don't do, and we've never done, us Westerners are so damn smart, we don't listen to local legends. And who's saying these local legends are wrong just because we don't know them? The mountain gorilla was a local legend.
Yeah.
The giant panda was a local legend. There was they weren't discovered until either by the West until the early 1900s. The okapi, were stories of a zebra giraffe.
Yes, I'm so excited that you're bringing this up, because I actually had like a bookmark in that page of your book where in the introduction, when you're talking about, European scientists didn't even see a mountain gorilla until 1902, a giant panda until 16, the Congo peacock in 36, and the megamouth shark until 76. And yet we've got it all figured out. And, we haven't even explored totally. We haven't covered every foot of the continental United States to explore it. And to say that there's not, some descendant of Gigantopithecus roaming around, it's
short-sighted. It's short-sighted.
At best. Arrogant
I would
at worst.
say arrogant, yeah. I was going to say ignorant, but it's not ignorant. It's just arrogant.
Yeah.
Right. And there are an average of 18,000 new species discovered every single year. Now, more than half of them are insects or like small reptiles or small birds. But I think it was like 3 years ago, a new species of orangutan was discovered.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the 1940s or 50s, a species of forest bison was found in Canada. These are big animals. These are big.
Right.
And we don't know everything yet. That's the point.
I know.
So could there be, dinosaurs roaming, the jungles of South America? Yes. I mean, people have reported seeing them. I don't know if you are familiar with the Ica stones.
What's the Ica stones?
A farmer it's in South America. I can't remember the country.
Yeah.
But he had he discovered a cave that had all these carved stones in them, and he started bringing them out and selling them, and people were buying them, and they had carvings on them of people looking through telescopes, carvings of there was one of open heart surgery.
Wow.
And there were other ones of people interacting with dinosaurs. And you could tell, this is a T-Rex, this is a Triceratops. You could tell what dinosaurs they were. And the stones are, hundreds, if not, 1,000 or plus years old. They were described as fake. And at some point, somebody started faking them, but the original ones that the guy found, they were aged. I mean, they could tell by the deposits in the carvings of, what the age was. I mean, how do they know that? How did they know what a dinosaur looked like?
It's amazing. And as I usually do when I have people such as yourself on the air, I always kind of steer the topic back toward Bigfoot a little bit. I'm kind of the Bigfoot nut on the show. One of my favorite interviews was with Bob Gimlin about a year ago. For hundreds, if not thousands of years, there have been everything from hieroglyphics to cave paintings to oral traditions and stories of indigenous people here talking about brother tribe, hairy man, big man, things like that, which we now, since the 50s and 60s, we call Bigfoot. And to deny the existence, like, well, that's just crazy. Brian, you're nuts. There's no such thing as Bigfoot. Well, I've never seen one, I guess. But to discount thousands and thousands and thousands of stories over hundreds of years, over centuries, just to discount that and say, well, it's not there because we haven't shot one yet. I think that's nuts. I think it's absolutely nuts just to even suggest that.
I agree completely, and I'll one-up you if you don't mind.
Please.
It's not just that there are stories over the centuries, but there are Bigfoot-like creatures with stories over the centuries, not just from North America, but from South America, from Europe,
Asia,
from
sure.
Africa, all over Asia, and from Australia, of all places, of Bigfoot-like creatures that are described as either warring with or peacefully interacting with man. And if we're to go with the we didn't have continent to continent communication until hundreds of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to go with that, which I don't think is true, but anyway, how did the stories get from place to place if it's just a story?
Right. And all of these stories have to have some kind of origin, something that originated it. it's absurd to just say, well, no, somebody made up a story sometime about a giant hairy. Well, no, I don't think they just made up a story about a big hairy man. There must have been some kind of interaction. There must have been something at some point as a genesis for this whole thing to grow. And then now in 2019, we're still debating it. We're still debating whether or not Patterson-Gimlin is real. I mean, it's just like, it's insane. It's crazy. This world that we live in, that so much of this planet Earth, as much as it shrinks with social media and intercontinental travel and everything, this world is still so enormous and huge that we haven't even stepped foot on every square foot of the planet yet in all these millions of years.
Right. And there's so much forest land and desert and mountainous regions that, we haven't set foot in a lot of these places. So could it house that? Yes. Just like the forest bison that's bigger than a Bigfoot, was hidden for a long time.
Yeah. We're not talking about microscopic amoeba, something that's, we're talking about a forest bison. I mean, I wonder what that tastes like grilled. I don't know.
I bet it tastes great. Yeah.
With a nice cold beer.
Yeah, I've eaten a lot of strange animals, and I've been waiting for the manatee to get off the endangered list, and I need to check that. Haven't you wondered what that would taste like?
Manatee?
I'm sorry, I just lost some. Just lost you some listeners. I'm sorry.
I don't know. Maybe it tastes like chicken for all I know.
You know what? I mean, it looks like it would have some nice marbled, be like a nice marbled steak.
Yeah, like a nice Kobe piece of beef.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, Bigfoot is, Bigfoot's my first love, I guess, when it comes to monsters.
Yeah.
It's one of the, the one criticism I've heard of my book is there are too many Bigfoot stories.
Yeah.
One, I don't think you can have too many Bigfoot stories, and two, Bigfoot hasn't been encountered in every state except for Hawaii.
Is that right?
And and a lot of these are fairly big cases. I mean, how could I leave Patty, from the Patterson-Gimlin film? How could I leave Patty out of California? How could I leave Momo out of Missouri, or the folk monster out of Arkansas? The folk monster being what the legend of Boggy Creek was based on. The Grass Man from Ohio. I mean, there's just classic Bigfoot stories from all over the place. I had to include them.
Oh no, and if they're part of the local legends or the local tradition, you have to include it if you're going to write a book that's worth its salt. I was just picking up the book when you said Hawaii. Yeah, Hawaii might not have many Bigfoot sightings or any at all, but holy cow. I'm just going back to the dinosaurs. I mean, you have the pterodactyl being sighted in Hawaii, and I mean, everything else.
Right. Pterodactyl, there's a sighting in Hawaii. I think I've got one from Kansas. And I think my favorite one is from Texas, because it was in 1977, 76, somewhere around there. A group of teachers they were driving home from a conference, and they saw a shadow, and it was moving, so it wasn't a cloud. So they pulled over and looked out at the car, and it was a pterodactyl that flew over their car. Its wingspan was as wide as the highway, and it just continued flying until it was out of sight. And I would like to think that 3 teachers would know what a pterodactyl looked like.
Well,
I would hope.
Well, yeah, you being a teacher yourself, you'd hope that your students or your teachers, your fellow teachers, be able to. That's not a robin or a blue jay or something like that. It's a pterodactyl.
It's not a robin. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just thinking like what I usually see in the sky. I mean, this place is filled with robins and sparrows, and that's incredible. It's just absolutely incredible to think of that. That these things are still being sighted. Like I when I was reading the book the first time, and there was the things about the woolly mammoth. being still sighted or seen in Alaska. I just was like, wow, this is really a remarkable read. This is really incredible. I've really got something in my hands here. This is great.
Well, and there's one I started looking into. I can't remember what the local name is. It's been a few months since I researched this, but in Canada, I mean, because you think there are places in the U.S. that man hasn't tread foot. Think of Canada,
right?
Yeah, there's a monster up there that's about 9 to 12 feet tall, covered in hair. It has a short tail. It has 3 claws. It eats the bark off trees and will destroy beaver dams to eat the beavers. And the description of it, and in 1985, a family saw this, and they were shown a picture of a giant, the Jeffersonian ground sloth. And they swore that that's what they saw. There is a similar type of monster that is seen in Latin America and down into the northern reaches of South America. That is the exact same description, and that species of ground sloth, the giant ground sloth during the last ice age, was covered South America and all the way up through to Canada. So again, who's to say that they became extinct?
Right. Who's to say? Incredible. Now we're going through all these monsters that that are covered in your book, Chasing American Monsters. Also, we talked about the shadow people. We talked about Bigfoot and things. Have you ever, cast your gaze toward the stars and thought about life on other planets?
Yes. And I really this wasn't Carl Sagan's quote, but he used it in Contact. Some other scientist said this quote, but I can't remember who it was. But if we are the only intelligent life in this vast universe, what a waste of space.
I love it. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Think about that for a second. Yeah, absolutely. What a waste of space.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as many billions, with a B, stars that we have in the Milky Way galaxy alone, and each one of those stars, there are probably stars out there that don't have planets, but we're finding more and more and more planets these days. There's just, a roll of the dice has to be something else out there.
I totally agree. We've talked about that on the show. We've had people on the show. We've talked about government conspiracies and this and that about Roswell and things like that. And I don't know who's to say if that's true or not. The storming, the raid on Roswell really didn't yield much information, sadly.
No, except for the fact that partying with rock bands in the desert's fun.
Yeah, let's take some peyote and drink some beer out there in the desert. Why not, right?
Yeah.
But it's just interesting, and that's like a common thread that runs through all this. It's like as much as we pat ourselves on the back and say, we have all this this handle on technology and science, there's just so much that is not even, we don't have the answers for. We don't even have the questions. We don't even have the questions for what's out there.
Yeah, well, you're right, and yeah, we're out there looking, and one of the problems, and science fiction authors have touched on this for years, is that we're looking for life as we know it. Yeah. And that might not be the life we might have looked past all sorts of life out there just because we weren't, like you said, we don't have the questions, we don't have the answers. We weren't looking for the right thing. We may have, we've been looking for radio signals to come to us from out there. Who, is Starfleet using radio waves? No. Yeah. So, I mean, everything all the methods we're searching are from our science, and we might be bombarded with alien signals all the time. We just can't get it. And while we're on this subject, one of the things that drives me absolutely nuts is when science says, okay, there's no life in this solar system, and the next solar system out is so far away, the distance is so vast, it would take too long for somebody to come here. They can't visit us. And that's according to our science. 120 years ago, we couldn't, heavier than air transportation wasn't possible.
Yeah, we're still thinking miles per gallon,
Yeah, right. Things change in time, and if these people, became intelligent before we crawled out of the oceans, there's no telling what their science can and can't do.
Yeah, I can't even keep my GD iPhone charged all day. You know what I mean?
Right. I had to plug mine into the wall. I'm sitting here right next to the wall.
Right. I've had a great conversation with Jason here, dear listeners, and you can get everything that we've talked about, like his books and writings and everything, on his website, jasonoffutt.com. Now, Jason's an accomplished author with what we've been talking about, his non-fiction. But Jason, I have to say, I picked up one of your fiction stories, one of your books, novels that you wrote, A Funeral Story. Holy cow, man. I loved it.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was my first novel.
Oh, for real?
That was the first novel that got published, yeah.
All right, I'm not going to give too much away because I want people to pick it up and buy it because it's great. But let's talk a little bit about it because a lot of it struck me, and it's really well done. Listeners, what the story is about, and I'm not giving anything away here. I'm just reading off the back of the book that you can get on his website. Flirting with the bereaved isn't easy. There's a guy. He's a normal guy. He has friends. He mows the lawn, bowls on Saturday. He hates his job, but he has a secret. A secret that rates so high on the creepometer he can't tell anyone ever. This guy likes to meet and have sex with strangers at funerals. So that totally fits in with our horror movie side of the podcast, because I pray to God that someday some Hollywood executive is tired of making the same retread, dumb, reboot movie, and they want to like pick something up, make something fresh and original, because I really enjoyed this book about this guy that picks up chicks at funerals because it's hilarious.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thanks. I really appreciate that. I had a lot of fun writing it. The concept of picking up girls at funerals actually came from something
real life experience. Did it come from real life experience?
Well, it happened at my grandma's funeral.
What?
My uncle, who's always been a bit of a ladies' man, especially for ladies a little younger than he is. This is at the graveside service for his mother. He was hitting on his niece's friend that she brought with her, for emotional support. He was hitting on this girl the whole time. It was absolutely insane.
Is that what got the ball rolling for inspiration?
Yes.
Well, she must have been pretty hot, I guess.
Well, she was pretty cute. Yeah, I will give him that. Yeah.
All right, but let me give you some more kudos on this book, because it's the story of these 4 lifelong friends, and they now as an aside, our founder on this show and co-host and producer Wayne, he has a business called Dungeon Crate, and what Dungeon Crate is, it's a subscription service. People pay so much a month. Sorry, Wayne, I'm probably butchering this, but they get a box of role-playing game accessories and things. He's really into the gaming community. Always has been in Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. And so these 4 lifelong friends in your book, they have this Friday night game for over 16 years. It's their family. It's as much family as the main character has ever had. And then one of them becomes ill, and the main character, he goes to these funerals and he researches in the paper, like, well, this guy's got some granddaughters, or things like that. And that's how he doesn't want to date in the traditional way until he meets the special someone at a funeral. But your references to science fiction things. Like I laughed when you were talking about this is SETI Alpha 5. Like I know I know the Star Trek shit. And you have a couple sly references to Omaha in there about the conventions and things like that. But man, it's funny. It's like Office Space funny because they hate their jobs.
That is really high praise. Thank you.
Well, and it's got the great. It's a buddy comedy. It's kind of rom-com. It's creepy. It's it's totally funny, and the the sex in the book, you get the idea, but it's not like gross like the cheap mommy porn stuff that's out there. It's really well written.
It's not 50 Shades, no.
It's not 50 Shades, but yet you get the idea of what's going on. What a great book, man. And I was reading it, I'm like, I gotta ask him, like, where the hell did this inspiration come for picking up, looking for love in all the wrong places, I guess.
Yeah, my dad's brother. That's where it came from.
Is he still with us?
Yeah.
Does he know about the book?
No, I don't think so. And so let's keep it that way.
Yeah. Don't invite him to listen to the podcast, man. Anyway, it's a great book. And so, listeners, if you've enjoyed listening to this conversation with Jason, you got to go to his website, and he writes all kinds of things. And I see there's also some books for children. Like I saw one about is there a biography about J.C. Penney?
Right. Yeah, I've got 3 books that are in a famous Missourians collection of books, and one of them's on J.C. Penney. Mm-hmm. Another one's on a woman who was in the Barnum and Bailey circus because she was like 8'4", and one lady who won a gold medal in the Olympics in 1936.
Nice. So what are you working on now?
Well, I have just got, actually about almost 2 hours ago, got an email from a publisher with a contract in it for a science fiction novel that I just hopefully it's gonna get published here pretty soon.
Right on, man. So any more books about paranormal or things like that, or anything else coming out?
Well, I've not at this moment. I've got a couple of things I'm debating on because I just like so much of it, and I've done cryptozoology, and I've done ghosts and shadow people, and I'm leaning right now towards doing something on time travel.
That's funny because the main character in Funeral Story, his father kind of tinkered with time travel, so to speak.
Right. That's what the book I just got the contract for today. The novel is it's time and dimensional travel. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Man.
Ever since I saw the first Star Trek show on time travel, I'm like, dude, I love it.
So, and your day job, you teach at Northwest Missouri State, is that right?
Yes. I teach journalism at Northwest Missouri State University.
And your students must really enjoy your class.
Well, I hope so. I don't know. Maybe the sleeping ones don't. Or maybe they just enjoy it too much.
My favorite professors in college are the ones that I could go out and have a beer with later. So do you ever, maybe they need just to have a beer with you. So.
Well, I traditionally have only done that whenever, right after it's the week of graduation.
Sure. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Jason. I'm really excited that you've been a part of the Necronomicast family. Listeners, go out to Jason Offutt, OFFUTT.com and explore his writings. Pick up a book. You're going to be, it's going to be time well spent, money well spent. And, we've really been excited, with our communications back and forth, to get you on the program. And it's been great having you here on the program, Jason.
Hey, it's been great to be on. I've had a great time. I usually judge the people who interview me on whether it seems like I was sitting next to them and having a conversation as opposed to an interview. And it just sounds like we've been sitting around having a cup of tea and shooting the crap. It's been awesome.
This is an adult show, so yeah, we've been shooting the shit. It's been fun.
Okay, that's why I held back. We didn't set the ground rules beforehand, so yeah, shooting the shit, that's where I would go.
Well, very good. Hey, everybody, on behalf of my co-hosts, Wayne, Lori, Zip, and Doug, this is Brian signing off for another episode of the Necronomicast.